Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With Dave Minuk, with Ezra Ginsberg, I am your host, Drew Mindell. We welcome you to the program on this Saturday, the 19th of June. So nice to see so many of you already joining us bright and early in the chat room or streaming the show wherever you may be. Nice to see Dave Minuk as well, and nice to see, given the point of view that the camera is positioned at, the world's largest version of Ezra Ginsberg.
Good morning, boys. Decided to get out of the city, so I'm out here in beautiful Lac du Bonnet, aka the hometown of Sean Reynolds, who we're going to have on in about half an hour. So a little bit of a different POV, as you mentioned, Drew. So hopefully everybody doesn't mind this for 1 week.
Well, I minded, and it's only been 2 minutes, so we'll have to wait to see what everyone else has to say. Dave Minuk, nice to see you joining us from your regular abode on this Saturday morning.
I'm in David's room as per usual, and
yes.
ready to rock. I mean, it'll be a little different during the commercial breaks. No Ez to banter with, but I'll make do.
You'll make do. You'll just talk to yourself, or a house plant or something along those lines. Do you carry that David's room sign with you from room to room? I think you should.
No, I've just got one in every single room.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. That was also a good plan. That's easier. Way to economize your movements there. That's very strategic.
Dave could get that on like a gold chain and kind of wear it like a clock, like Flava Flav, if he really wanted to.
I think that's a great birthday idea. I think we should definitely chip in. We'll see if we can get some people to get some money together to have Dave just walk around with a giant Dave
just
sign
remember,
around him at all times.
We have to be careful what we talk about on this show, because if you recall, thanks to our boy Ty, Ezzy ended up with a Samantha Fox poster. So, I mean, sometimes you think it's a joke, but people actually start to take you guys seriously. So, be a little
I actually
cautious.
forgot to bring that poster out to Lac du Bonnet, Dave. I was going to call you and get it. Then I thought maybe that's something that I should just leave in the city.
Well, I thought you were going to bring it home to show to your wife. I wanted to see that reaction. So,
well, she's sad if she watched this program, so she would have seen it in the background.
Has she commented? Has Nio commented on it?
She did see it. She was watching last weekend, so she did see it.
Okay. That's good. And no comment. You're still living at home. That's okay. You're on the couch, or you're still in the marital bed.
No, we're good. I mean, that's not really going to change anything. Nothing surprises Naomi at this point. So she thought it was funny. Shout out to Ty. That was great. We always like to have fun with it. So it's the original poster girl, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Can't go wrong with that. Even though I still would like to have my Anna Kournikova poster, but that was burned a long time ago.
That it was. I think it was made into a toxic waste area more than just burnt in any event. Let's get started talking about the Winnipeg Jets on this Saturday morning. Last week we sort of, it was the immediacy of the loss to the Montreal Canadiens and how the 4-game sweep occurred so easily, and how meekly the Winnipeg Jets left the playoff race and the playoff chances. That was so front of mind for everybody. Now that it's been a couple of weeks since then, I think we can now begin to maybe with that sober second thought, and with the playoff loss further in the rearview mirror, we can now evaluate this Winnipeg Jets team. I want to start this morning talking about the off-season priorities for this Winnipeg Jets team. What is at the sort of the top of the list if you had to power rank where the Jets need to improve the most, what areas they need to shore up, what they need to address first and foremost as this offseason is beginning to pick up speed. We know that Dougie Hamilton and his representatives have now been granted permission to talk to other teams to see what the market holds for them. A very interesting move by the Carolina Hurricanes, and that's something we'll talk about. We know that there's rumors that in Minnesota, the contract extension, the contract negotiations with Kaprizov are not going well, and that there's possibility that he's probably using the KHL as an opportunity and or leverage to maybe get more money out of the Minnesota Wild. But
pay him whatever he wants, Drew. I don't think the Wild can afford to lose him, right? Like, the Wild probably don't make the playoffs without him.
There's no question, and we'll talk more about that at different points in the course of this offseason. But from the Jets' perspective, guys, what is the top priority in your mind, Dave, that you think the Jets need to address this offseason? It's fairly clear that there's not going to be any changes to the coaching staff, so we don't want that. That's not a lot of people were clamoring for that. A lot of people maybe expected that there'd be a change behind the bench. Unless something shocking happens between now and the start of next season, that ship has sailed. So from your perspective, Dave, what's the off-season priority for the Jets?
I'm going to shock the world and say defense. And I think, and I really do think like part of it is because you really do want to not have to rush young defensemen into the NHL. So I've talked about a guy like Johnny Kovacevic, 2017 third rounder. He's, a 6'5", 200 plus right shot defenseman. Looked really good for the Manitoba Moose this season. Only in his second year as a pro. Played college before this. He's a guy who eventually you're thinking could fit on that third pairing right side potentially for the Winnipeg Jets, maybe higher, but for sure in that role. Really took a step this season with the Manitoba Moose. You want to see him gain another, potentially another year in the AHL with that consistency without the need to rush him forward. Dylan Sandberg, another player who I would put in that camp, very similar to Kovacevic, played college. Obviously, this was his first year pro. They were paired up for much of the AHL season, so those two are easy to talk about. But I always think to myself, like, there were so many fans. I can't tell you how many fans actually were clamoring for Dylan Sandberg this year in the NHL. And Dylan Sandberg, from what I saw, was perfectly suited to be playing in the AHL. And you never know. I mean, there's guys sometimes get that opportunity and they're able to handle it. But the amount of pressure that would have been on a player like Dylan Sandberg to come up and secure a spot, that to me is a problem for an organization that, like I said, the problem with the defense is that it's not caught up to the forwards, right? That's kind of the situation the Jets have put them in with the way they've drafted. They've got a lot of defensive prospects right now. Declan Chisholm, Leon Gavanke, Ville Heinola. But the problem is that those guys sometimes are a year away from being a year away, right? And maybe those guys are ready to take the step. But I just think if you can buttress that by throwing a more, a veteran guy to really secure things, allow them to come in without the pressure of being a second pairing guy, then that's going to be a huge, like look at Logan Stanley being able to come and be a third pairing guy. Maybe he's a second pairing guy next year for the team, but he wasn't needed. He was kind of needed, but he wasn't really put in the position to be in a second pairing role. So to me, if you're the Jets and it's easier said than done, you may have to trade away some talent, young talent to get it. But I can't see how defense is the really. I mean, obviously there's some forward things that you'd like to see done, but for the most part, it's got to be defense that needs to be improved.
And boys, we have to factor in the expansion draft, right? Because listening to Weber on Winnipeg Sports Talk earlier this week, I agree with him 100%. Like, if I'm Chevy, I have to be loathing the chance of losing Dylan DeMello in the expansion draft. But that means that you would have to leave, as you just mentioned, Dave, Logan Stanley. You'd have to leave him unprotected. And we'll talk about it as the show goes on. And I'm sure, this will come up with Sean Reynolds, but AKA Rennie. But, there is a side deal that's possible, right? Like it might be similar to, swapping draft picks like they did with Toby Enstrom. Like, I don't think you're going to have to, give up a ton in order for Seattle not to take Logan Stanley. But you're absolutely right, Dave. And going back to last week when we were talking about Paul Maurice's exit interview, I mean, we know, guys, that there isn't a high chance that both Dylan Sandberg and Ville Heinola are going to be on your left side to start, right? Like, it just isn't likely. So, you probably have to replace Derek Forbort, right, Dave? And you're going to have to figure out, like, what's going on with that right side. Tucker Pullman is a guy that we haven't talked a lot about. He's a pending UFA, right? And I think there's a chance that he comes back, but like, what's his role? Because we know that Dylan DeMello played with Josh Morrissey and they were much more effective. So does that mean that Tucker Pullman is going to be brought back as a third pairing defenseman? Like another guy
that's what he's best suited for. I mean, so, if the Jets are able to re-sign Tucker Pullman, to play their third pairing right side, I don't think anybody would really, assuming the dollars are not outrageous and they're not going to be given,
given he took a 3-year deal when he was coming out of college for what, 3 or after his first 1-year deal. Yeah, he signed for like the like 3 years at $775 or something like that. Something
like that. He took the bird in the hand. He took the guarantee of being that 3-year contract and gave up whatever salary he gave up, and who knows if he ended up giving up any of it. But my point is that Tucker Pullman, if Tucker Pullman comes back as your third pairing right side defenseman, I don't think anybody's going to be too upset by it. I mean, look, I don't know anybody that could have watched the Jets this past year and thought that Tucker Poolman playing with Josh Morrissey made sense. Paul Maurice was the only guy who thought that made sense. And for whatever reason, that's his business. But it is clear that, Josh Morrissey was a far better player with Dylan DeMello. Tucker Poolman was a better player playing in sheltered minutes on the third pairing with Logan Stanley when they got paired together. If it turns out that Logan Stanley and Tucker Poolman are the Jets' third pairing next year, I don't think anybody's going to be too apoplectic about that. The problem comes, I think, from the Jets' perspective, or to Dave's point about the need for more from the defense, when you look around the NHL right now and you look to see the offense that is coming from other teams' back end. I mean, before Marc-Andre Fleury gave the game away last night, Alex Pietrangelo scored what was going to be the game-winning goal for the Vegas Golden Knights. He's been terrific. You look at the offense.
He has 3 goals in the series.
That's my point. He's got 3 goals in 3 games. It's terrific. You look at the offense that the Habs are now getting from their back end after the early part of the Leafs series, where they got nothing from the back end. You look at the offense they got against the Jets in the 4-game sweep. I mean, you see the dynamic offensive players that a team like the Colorado Avalanche have. Cale Makar, who's fantastic. I mean, this all leads back to the Jets sort of, and Maurice talked about it and Chevy talked about it. It's now been 2-3 years since the defense of the Jets was decimated. Nothing has been done to address it. So is this the year, the offseason, the Jets need to address it, be it by making a big splash in free agency, which is not something they've been readily available to do for unrestricted free agents, or is it going to require a trade to do so?
Right. And I would say, I think, like, we obviously can't look into a crystal ball, but I think you have to make a move. And I don't know if Jamie Oleksiak is considered a big splash. Weber talked about Oleksiak. We know that Chevy wanted to acquire him. We also know Chevy wanted to acquire David Savard. So what does that tell you guys? I think he's looking to acquire both a left shot and a right shot defenseman, right? Like, I think we would all agree that there's a good chance that Morrissey, Pionk, and DeMello are the 3 defensemen that are protected. It's either Stanley or DeMello. I mean, there's nobody that.
I mean, sorry, Ezzy, let me just jump in there. It can't be Stanley. I mean, we know what Stanley is, at least at this stage in his career. And can he get better? Sure, he could continue to develop, and this isn't disrespectful to him. But Logan Stanley right now best plays at a third pairing level. You're not going to protect a third pairing defenseman over a guy like Dylan DeMello, who, one, you just signed to a long-term contract, a 4-year deal only a year ago. And 2, a guy who can play in your top 4. That's what Dylan DeMello can do for this Jets team, where Logan Stanley is best suited to play on your third pairing on your left side. I know that Stanley's big, and I know the Jets are lacking in size and everything else. I know he's a nice story, but strictly in terms of on-ice impact, Dylan DeMello's got to be the answer.
Yeah, and the other thing too, guys, is like you have to factor in, like, you always have to look at, like, who has a really good chance at making the team next year on the left side? Well, Ville Heinola, right? And I agree with Dave. Like, I don't think anybody's going to dispute that Dylan Samberg is ready for the NHL, but it simply comes down to, does Paul Maurice, and the coaching staff do Paul Maurice and the coaching staff believe that, he can make the opening right roster and play a full-time role? Like, are you going to have 2 rookie defensemen on the left side? And that's why I bring up a guy like Jamie Oleksiak, and there are other guys, that are out there. Like Ryan Murray is another guy. I mean, we know the guys. Like Mike Riley is another guy. Like, these are all guys that the Jets, I think, took a look at prior to the trade deadline. So that's why, I guess, in a roundabout way, guys, what I'm trying to say is the Jets could be bringing in more than 1 defenseman, right? Because I think you can expect Jordy Ben's probably not coming back. There's a chance Derek Forbort doesn't come back. And so you're going to have to fill out that defense. And yes, Heinola probably fits into that left side, but let's be honest here, guys. Like, the big fish really is Dougie Hamilton. That would be a splash, Drew, right? Like, picking up Jamie Oleksiak, that's a good, like, a former first-round pick, veteran defenseman. How old is Oleksiak? 27, 28. He's a bona fide top 4 guy. He had 5 goals and 9 points in the playoffs last year for Dallas. I mean, he's a good player. But Dougie Hamilton is a top 20, arguably top 10 defenseman in the NHL. So, we can talk about what it would take to get Dougie Hamilton and if the Jets would give him, $8 million a year. But there's no doubt that, if the Jets can acquire Hamilton, yeah, that would be great. But I think there's probably 6 other teams maybe even more, maybe 8 or 10 that probably want him too. But I to answer your question, Drew, the defense does need to be much better, and Chevy does need to address that.
I mean, Dougie Hamilton would be a. I mean, look, you're absolutely right, Ezzy. He would be a wonderful addition to the Jets' back end, Dave, and he would be a wonderful addition to any team's back end. And what history has shown us is that for players who have options, especially ones who aren't yet familiar with the city of Winnipeg, which Dougie Hamilton wouldn't really be familiar with the city of Winnipeg, it's unlikely that the Jets are going to win a bidding war for that player. It's just the reality of the situation. It's what we've seen time and time again, is that when guys have options and when they're not already members of the Winnipeg Jets, they don't usually end up coming to Winnipeg. The Jets are pretty good at retaining some of the free agents they want to retain. DeMello last year, for example, obviously Wheeler re-signed here. Lots of other guys have re-signed long-term deals here. Connor, Ehlers, etc., Hellebuck, and keep going. But those guys were already ingrained in the organization. They were familiar with the organization. They knew what Winnipeg as a city had to offer. Mm-hmm. It's unlikely. I mean, it'd be such an anomaly to see a guy like Dougie Hamilton come to Winnipeg when he has so many other options in front of him, Dave.
I don't know. That Manitoba Museum is pretty solid. You can go see the non-such. I mean,
we do have a lot of culture here, and Dougie Hamilton's a guy, and God help him in Calgary. That this was a criticism that the guy enjoyed, cultural experiences.
That was the best. He's really kind of an unusual guy. He likes to go to museums. It was like, that's your biggest complaint, then you got
in Calgary. In Calgary, I don't know what they call museums, but
going to museums is really unusual. That's unusual, guys.
Let me tell you, if you get a number one defenseman who likes museums, you build museums that he can go see.
It's amazing. They ran him out of town because he liked to go to museums.
No, but I mean, look,
membership to the Museum for Human Rights.
Yeah.
We'll throw it in.
but I think what it comes down to is the fact that we've said this for I don't know how long. I mean, you can't expect a guy like Tucker Pullman, who is a nice player, and as he's already gone over his virtues, but he's making salary isn't always commensurate with talent, but he's making $775,000 or something like that. And you want him to be your first pairing guy. Look at how many teams are paying their first pairing guys that kind of money. And the answer is none. So the reality is, if you want a first pairing defenseman, you have to pay for them. I mean, we've seen it, right? And so you can't afford, and look, everybody's going to be like, well, the back years of his deal, of an 8-year deal for Dougie Hamilton, are going to be bad. Sure. But again, it's like the Wheeler contract. You can forgive the Wheeler contract in the last 2 years of it, if you win a Stanley Cup in one of those years, then it makes it more palatable. So to me, a Dougie Hamilton deal, and I know people are saying, well, it's pie in the sky, but the reality is, if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff, another year with this defensive group, or try, especially given what Paul Maurice said. I mean, don't take my words for it. Listen to your coach. Listen to what the coach said in his end of season availability. He was talking about guys he wouldn't put in the lineup to take out, like young guys putting in the lineup for, and he it's funny because he said both things, right? He said in Carolina when they went to these conference finals, I think he said he had 10 rookies in the lineup. And necessity sometimes forces your hand, as we've seen here in Winnipeg. But the reality is, we know, as he said, you're not likely to have 2 rookies in your lineup or 2 young players in your 2 or 3 young guys. So, guys, I don't know that there's a big amount of space for Paul Maurice and Kevin Cheveldayoff past next year. And if I'm Kevin Cheveldayoff, 10 years at the helm is good. Making the playoffs is good. Getting to the second round, third round, 1 year, that's important. But for a team that was projected as high as Winnipeg, just getting there, being one of 50% of the teams that make it to the playoffs, I don't think is a major accomplishment for a general manager. And so knowing what knowing that the core is what it is, knowing that Connor Hellebuck and Mark Scheifele have 3 more years left on their deals, you have to win with this group either next year or the year after. That's your window really for this team, because then you're going to have aging forwards and your defense is going to be solid again.
And then you've got Scheifele and Hellebuck that are definitely going to have you could be talking about $9 million for these guys, right? Like I'm not joking. Like Scheifele we know is underpaid, and Hellebuck is definitely underpaid, and that's why it goes back to kind of what you were talking about, Dave, and what Drew was asking us off the top of the show. Like a guy like David Savard, we don't know exactly how close Chevy came to acquiring David Savard, but we know he was in on him. So like I look at it like if you're able to bring in a Savard and maybe Morrissey plays with a Savard, maybe you have Dylan DeMello on your third pair with Ville Heinola. Like if you were able to bring in a guy like Savard, I agree the chances of the Jets getting Dougie Hamilton are low, just because we haven't seen the Jets get those types of high-priced free agents, right? So I look at it like a guy like Tucker Poolman might be squeezed out, and I hate to say that because you guys know I really like him, and I just think you have to change your top 6 and specifically your top 4, and I think that probably means looking at bringing in a left shot defenseman, and that probably means bringing in a right shot defenseman. I would have probably no problem with Derek Forbort being a third pairing guy, if that makes Ville Heinola a second pairing guy. But we know, guys, there's a good chance that Ville Heinola might get sheltered a little bit and only play 12 to 14 minutes a game.
I also don't have confidence. Sorry, Ezzy, I don't have confidence that Paul Maurice is going to play him. I mean, it's crazy to say.
That's if Paul Maurice isn't going to play Ville, like to me that just doesn't make any sense. Drew, you mentioned Cale Makar. Okay, Bowen Byram is another top pro. I realize he was injured and wasn't playing in the playoffs. Samuel Girard, Samuel Girard's 22, Dave, I think. Colorado isn't afraid to play young defensemen, and Ville Heinola is not 18 years old anymore. This is a guy that was drafted 2 years ago. He's ready to go in the NHL. What more does he have to prove at the AHL level? I don't think he has anything else to prove. So that's a problem. If he's not going to play in the NHL next year and everybody can see his upside, that's a huge problem.
Well, I mean, you heard what Paul Maurice said in the exit interviews talking about Heinola, talking about how he needs him to get faster and he needs him to get stronger. And I mean, again, my fear is that Paul Maurice is always going to defer to a veteran, because that's what we've seen. I mean, you can say what he says about playing 10 rookies when I took the Hurricanes to the Cup, a quarter of a century ago or whatever, however long ago it was. But, what have you done for me lately? Well, lately you haven't played anyone that isn't a grizzled veteran. So to me, that is the, if you're a young player, I mean, it was on social media, and, maybe we're reading more things into it than there really are there. But Ville Heinola put up himself as the Bernie meme, the Bernie Sanders meme.
That was funny.
It was very funny, but, I do think that there's something underlying there. I don't think you just put that up and not expect it to make some sort of ripple.
I don't think, we got to give, I don't like that. To me, he's showing personality. And the one thing you don't want is that sort of thing to become I honestly, Drew, I think it's a statement of fact maybe, but I don't think it needs to be taken any deeper than he's just having some fun with this situation. Sometimes guys just do that. And I don't think, like I said, I think
did he have to take it down?
No, he left it up.
Is it still up?
I think it's still up.
It's on his Instagram.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's still there, but to me, it was something, and I try not to read too much into this. I agree with you there, Dave. And players showing personality is great because, well, it's great for us and it's great for the league and everything else. And it happens all too rarely in the NHL. But I do think that, try as they might to sugarcoat the year that Ville Heinola had, playing in overseas, playing at the World Juniors, coming here. Oh, he played more games than he typically would, blah, blah, blah. To me, they were just trying to cover their asses a little bit. I do think that they wasted a year of development in Ville Heinola.
Well, I mean, he played in the AHL, and
I know.
Craig Heisinger called him the best player in the AHL. So, Drew, I mean, at the end of the day, I think what it comes down to, and I think as he just said it, and I'm going to agree with the boy on the bottom, I think there's no question that if Ville Heinola is not playing, he took it down, then he put it back up. But if Ville Heinola is not playing next season, and I don't care, guys, I don't care if a guy is small, it doesn't make a difference. You could say he's going to get pushed around. The reality is the Jets are.
You drafted him when he was small. You knew he was an undersized player.
Hold on a second. like we have Craig Button on multiple times every year. And we're most likely going to have him on before the draft on July 24th, which also happens to be my birthday. So happy early birthday to me. Craig Button always talks about this.
Wish yourself a happy birthday a month out.
We always talk about this though, Drew, with Craig Button and other scouts, other experts we have on. Size doesn't mean anything. Does size matter with Cole Caulfield? Like, does size matter with Alex DeBrincat? Does size matter with Samuel Girard, defenseman on the out? Like, if you're a good player, you're a good player. And Heinola, by the way, it's not like he's 5'8". What is he, Dave? 5'11", 6. Like, Heinola needs to play in the NHL, full stop, guys. Everyone can see his potential. And I think Paul Maurice, even though he sees that same potential, he talks to his scouts. He's watched Heinola play in the World Juniors. He talks with Pascal Vincent. In my opinion, this is just me. There's absolutely no reason why he isn't in your top 6 next year. Full
agree.
Stop.
I agree, Ezzy. The only reason is the head coach who makes the lineup decisions, and that's where I hold my breath, simply because history has shown that, you know, oftentimes he might not choose it. It would be a wrong choice, in my opinion, and Heinola needs to be in your lineup, especially if you're not filling that role, if you're not filling that slot. Then it's you know, if you're relying on Derek Forbort again, then it's especially crazy to not keep him in there.
Like, Drew, the only guys that should be penciled in on the left side right now in your top 6 are Morrissey and Heinola. No one else. That's it.
Yeah, and the only reason that Stanley wouldn't be there is because you don't know what would happen with the expansion draft.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I agree with you, Ezzy, that if your left side right now, if you're not going to acquire somebody for the left side of your defense, you know, in free agency or via trade or anything, your left side to start next year should be Morrissey, Heinola, and let's assume Stanley doesn't get chosen by Seattle. You know, you could go down the left side with Morrissey, Heinola, Stanley, and then if you want to bring back a depth defenseman, you got Nathan Beaulieu, I suppose, as your 7th or an 8th defenseman that can play on that left side as well. But I mean, you can't expect that, say, Beaulieu is going to fill that role over Heinola to start next year, Dave.
Oh my God! Let me tell you something.
I mean,
it's usually not that hot in Winnipeg in October, but let me tell you, it wowould be roasting hot here in the Peg in October if that was the case. But no, I mean, look, guys, I think there's no question about it that Ville Heinola is a player who's ready to go. And look, as you make a good point. I think what you do is you have to try and bring in some guys who have talent, like a guy like a David Savard. Obviously, that's on the right side, but someone like that who is going to insulate your young draft picks and your young guys who will be able to play again. We're looking at a 72-game AHL season for the Manitoba Moose next season. So guys like Dylan Samberg, Johnny Kovacevic, those guys are in with the Moose. They start their seasons there. If they have a great training camp, I mean, and one of the questions in the chat was, well, what happened with Logan Stanley last year in his development relative for guys like Samberg and Kovacevic. And what I said is he actually didn't have a great 2019-20 because he was dealing with injuries, but his offseason was phenomenal. And that to me is what you need to see from guys. And I think that'll be inspirational for a guy like Johnny Kovacevic, who's a hard worker anyways, and a Dylan Samberg once he's done his fishing trip with his parents. I think that kind of situation will really give these guys an opportunity to see what a guy like Stanley, who's not that much older than them, what he accomplished during an offseason, and they'll be able to use that inspiration to get better themselves.
And another guy, Drew, I just wanted to quickly throw out another guy. I realized that, free agency doesn't start for a while. Like,
as you hold that thought, Sean's in the chat, sure. So we're going to bring in Rennie, and you'll hold on to that thought for after Sean Reynolds joins us here on the program, live from Montreal. I'm just glad that Kenny Weeb still doesn't have you doing a post-game show, 12 hours after the game ended. There's our buddy, Sean Reynolds. He joins us on the program now. Good morning, Rennie. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. I just saw this tweet that you guys sent out about me being a global icon. That's hilarious.
That's pure Mindell right there. That's what that is. That's pure Mindell.
That's good stuff. No, yeah. I love it. Yeah, it was another late post game, and we all know Kenny has a hard time letting go. Yeah. So whenever there's an opportunity for me to duck out of those shows, I take them. Yeah,
I'm gonna say what you want more than anything is you want there to be like a Top Golf or something that opens in Winnipeg, so you can just send Rennie, you can send Ken there to go golfing in the middle of the night and let you not have to worry about a post game show starting at 12:30 Eastern time or something like that.
Yeah. Hey, anyone out there with kids, especially young kids, is going to understand this as a parent. It's like they fill up the gas tank, and it's your job as a parent to burn the gas tank, right? Well, having two young daughters, and they're a little bit older, so they're not quite in that toddler stage, but having gone through that stage, I very much understand how to handle Kenny. You got to burn his gas tank. He always needs to be doing something to occupy his time. So I've been there before.
There you go. Sean Reynolds joining us on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. Sean's appearance is brought to you by Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty, official realtors of Illegal Curve Hockey. When 95% of your clients come via referral, it shows your commitment to honesty, integrity, and a total dedication to client satisfaction. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, come shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia online at zappiagroup.com. Sean, obviously, we'll talk to you about the Jets, but we have to start with what happened in Montreal last night. You were at the arena. You're in Montreal for the series between the Habs and the Golden Knights. I mean, 2-1 late in the game. The Habs really aren't showing that much of a push. And then Marc-Andre Fleury makes a horrible error, ties the game with very little time to go. Montreal wins it in overtime. Is this Habs team just on like at this point? Are they becoming a little bit of just a team of destiny or something like that?
I mean, I think you got to give them credit where it's due. Last night, I'm sitting in the press box and we're watching this game happening, and the Habs are keeping it close. And I turned to Eric Engels beside me, and I was like, "Are the Montreal Canadiens going to Winnipeg Jets the Vegas Golden Knights here?" You know, it was like a classic Jets game, right? Just get absolutely worked, get outshot, get beat all over the ice, and then sneak away with a victory, right? But I know, and believe me, you guys know this as well, that drives a huge swath of the Jets nation nuts. That seems to be the playbook for the Jets on a lot of nights. That's not the playbook for the Montreal Canadiens typically, but I think what you have to give them credit for last night is their ability to survive a game like that. We know that the Jets have shown that they can survive games like that. Maybe it's not a good thing because they rely on that too often. My expectation would be that the Montreal Canadiens are a team that aren't going to go down that road, but give them credit. This is a team that lost their head coach. I took a look and I thought that the systems that were put in place by Pete DeBoer to trap the Canadiens in their own zone were brilliant last night. And I thought it was smart to come with a plan like that because you're facing a team that's going to have trouble making in-game adjustments based on the fact that their coach isn't there. And I thought that that's what we saw for the majority of the first and the second period, was that the Canadiens weren't able to make the adjustments required to break out of their zone, to get through the neutral zone. And it just was wave after wave after wave of the Vegas Golden Knights just crashing down on them. But I think you have to give them credit. One, it's Carey Price, right? And again, Jets fans will know from having Connor Hellebuck that when you've got a goaltender like that, that can be the plan. Sometimes just having that goalie can be the plan, simple enough. But I will say this, I didn't think, and you guys could tell me if you feel differently, but watching that game, I didn't see a lot of panic from the Canadiens throughout that first and second period. I mean, they're getting caved in time and time again. They didn't get running around. They didn't get panicking. I thought they kept a lot of the shots to the outside. You know, we'll hear that argument all the time with the Jets as well when they give up 40 shots. I mean, when you're giving up 40 shots, a lot of them have to be from the outside. It's just the nature of the game. You can't get inside that often. But they didn't panic. They stuck around after, you know, we talk about the egregious mistake by Fleury, but Stahl had just as egregious a mistake, right? So to me, the crazy boneheaded mistakes are 1 for 1 in that game. The Canadiens came out and scored 30 seconds after that happened. So you got the response that you needed at the right time. Yeah, they get a gift towards the end of the game, but I give them credit. The OT showed up, and there was no question in my mind that the Vegas Golden Knights were the better team during the first 3 periods, but no question at the same time that the Montreal Canadiens were clearly the best team in overtime. They got it done when they needed to. Now, if the rest of the series looks like this and they squeeze their way by into the Stanley Cup final, you know, having a carbon copy of that game happen over and over again, there will be problems. But what we've seen from this Montreal Canadiens team so far throughout the playoffs, they're not the team that's getting caved in. They're the team that's applying the pressure on the other team. The fact they couldn't do it last night, but survived and found a way to win, I think is impressive.
And Sean, we want to get into the Jets, but that game was just so incredible. Like, we have to talk to you about it. You're in Montreal.
Yeah.
It's just so, like, I mean, we have to talk about Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki. I mean, these guys are playing so well at such a young age. But I wanted to ask you about something that I feel like, you know, we would be remiss if we didn't bring up Luke Richardson, right? Like, we know what happened with his daughter. And maybe if you're able to provide an update on Dominic Ducharme, I'm assuming that he's not going to be back for game 4, but just how incredible was it to be there in the building, you know, covering that? And for those that don't know, like, Luke Richardson lost his daughter tragically. It was about 11 years ago. And obviously he, you know, pointed to the sky. Like, that type of stuff is just, I mean, it transcends hockey, right?
Yeah. Everyone loves Luke Richardson. Everyone loves that guy. As a player, he was a guy that everyone loved. I remember, you know, when the Jets left and you were kind of looking for teams to line up behind, he was with the Edmonton Oilers for a while there and was a guy that I just absolutely loved playing. And, you know, you brought up that story. I retweeted that moment where he kind of taps the pin that, you know, represents his daughter and, you know, youth struggling with, you know, mental health issues. And, just such an absolutely sweet moment. You couldn't expect it happening, or you wouldn't want it to happen to a better guy like that. Talking about, you know, the atmosphere and everything like that. You know who Jeremy Taggart is? He's the drummer from Our Lady Peace. And I follow him on Twitter. And he had this really interesting conversation where people were asking him about, like, all the different vocalists that he'd, you know, they'd opened for and played alongside over the years, and the ones that he thought were above and beyond. And he brought up Lane Staley from Alice in Chains. And he used this line where he said Lane Staley would walk, you know, really good, you know, Eddie Vedder, people like that would come out on stage and they'd start singing, and you know, people would react and respond. That's what you want from a leading man. But he'd use this line that just stuck in my head where he said Lane Staley walked on stage, and when he started singing, he changed faces. So people in the audience were just like, and so I'm obsessed now with big moments and watching people's faces. And it's one of the reasons why when Nick Ehlers scores that overtime goal to cap that miracle comeback in game 3, it just kills me that there weren't fans in the building, because I'm obsessed now with watching the faces of people after moments like that happen. So I was down right in behind the net, getting ready to go live into our Sportsnet show after that game, fully expecting it to be this 2-1 loss for the Montreal Canadiens where they just couldn't get things going. I was right behind the net where Josh Anderson scores. And he scores. And again, now I'm so obsessed with watching faces. I stop watching the celebration on the ice and I just turn around and I'm watching the audience. And the look of absolute joy and shock and this unbelievable reaction that you were getting from the crowd was just something that was, you know, it gives you goosebumps, right? No matter where you are, to see people made so happy by a moment like that, it's unbelievable. And so that was really neat because, and then you got to see it play out again right away in overtime. But it's those goals that are always different, right? Like the reaction to the game tying goal was so much better than the game winning goal, just because of the shocking nature of it. It was really neat to be there. I've said this time and time again, 3,500 fans. It was loud when it was 2,500 fans, but that Bell Center in Montreal, it's cavernous. It's huge. It's the biggest rink in the league. And the way that those 3,500 fans are filling it with noise, it's, and I say this confidently, covering the Jets and knowing that the whiteout is insane, the loudest building I've ever heard, but give credit to the Montreal Canadiens fans. 3,500 people fill that place with a wall of sound. It's impressive.
Sean Reynolds is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. You know Sean, of course, with his work covering the Winnipeg Jets for Sportsnet. He's in Montreal covering the Habs and the Golden Knights. A man of many talents, clearly.
Well, Sean, we're gonna move away from Montreal. We're gonna bring you back to Winnipeg, and we're gonna take a look. We spent the first half an hour of the show talking about the off-season priorities for the Winnipeg Jets. So, how do you see it for Kevin Cheveldayoff and his staff, really, for their number one top priority?
Well, I've been saying this. I said it heading towards the trade deadline. Like the lack of the ability to procure a top-notch defenseman on the Jets' blue line is a massive problem. It should have been addressed 2 years ago if possible. And I've been on the record as saying this. I know that the Jets organization likes to say that the retirement of Dustin Byfuglien kind of threw a monkey wrench into everything, and it did. But they made a conscious choice at that time to go in 2019 and keep that team intact, knowing that there was going to be an expiry date and they were going to have a whole bunch of really talented, big, great defensemen walk out the door at the same time. And I don't subscribe to the thought process that they needed to keep that team together, that they couldn't have made some moves to send out expiring contracts and try and bring players in to mitigate that situation. I get the idea that they loved what they had in 2018. They wanted to give it a try again in 2019, but that's a conscious decision they made to not address that, and they've been living with the consequences ever since. And to me, and I think you guys would agree, last season we were, if you go back a year ago, and I guess it's different because of COVID, but if you go back to this point in the offseason, I think we were all thinking, okay, they got to address the defense, and they never really did, right? Yeah, they brought in Derek Forbert, but this isn't what we're talking about. They need help on the top end. So in my mind, they have to swing for the fences. You can't go into a third straight season with a defense core that your head coach now is admitting is not good enough. He didn't use those words, I'm paraphrasing, but I think we all got that sense from Paul Maurice that that's the way they feel there. You can't keep doing that. You can't keep having one of the best, if not the best, goaltenders in the game. You can't keep having a very capable offensive core. You can't brag about the center depth that you have. You can't have everything in place except for one thing and keep not addressing that one thing. So, I think they got to swing for the fences. If they have to find a way to overpay a defenseman to try and get a 1A, 1B defenseman in here, I think that they have to do that. That's how the game works. Kevin Cheveldayoff has done a good job of not doing that, but where's it got him? It's got him to a really great offensive core, a really great goaltender, and a hole on defense that is costing this team time and time again. If it's going to take them sending prospects down the road in order to bring someone in, I think they should do that. If it's going to take them leveraging some of the talent that they have up front and moving a significant piece up front to bring in a significant piece on the back end, I think they have to explore that. I just don't think the stand pat approach that has been happening the last couple of years and hoping that their young players will, enter the lineup and start making a difference. There's a window here that exists. We've all been talking about it. I think they've wasted a lot of it. They need to get at it. There needs to be action this offseason.
Agree with you, Sean. Sean Reynolds of Sportsnet, our guest here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube. We're live on all of our social media platforms. You talk about going for that big swing, and free agency has never really been fruitful for the Winnipeg Jets. Unrestricted free agency, guys like Dougie Hamilton, they try, they say they try, never hasn't worked out, with those big ticket deals. To your point of maybe having to subtract from your current roster, then is there a player that, like, who sort of would be at the forefront of your list of players that you could see be shipped out in exchange for that top flight defenseman? I mean, from my perspective, it's probably Kyle Connor. I don't think Blake Wheeler has the value anymore, and he's got a no move clause, so that seems like a no-brainer. Nikolai Ehlers is so dynamic at 5-on-5, and I wonder if Kyle Connor, maybe there's some, given what he doesn't do on the back end, and he's a tremendous goal scorer, we know that, but that usually isn't the Jets' problem. But then again, when they were going through their severe slump towards the end of the regular season and in the series against Montreal, goal scoring was an issue. So could you potentially be creating a new problem by trying to solve one problem?
Yes. That the short answer to that is yes. But I mean, everything's a balance, right? And you'd heard, I don't know if it was Paul Maurice or Kevin Cheveldayoff who had said it, but no one has everything, right? The Vegas Golden Knights are sure close, right? But no one has everything.
They have everything but a series lead. Yeah.
There you go.
Too soon, Drew.
But I mean, you have to find that balance, right? And right now, I'm a big believer, and I know a lot of it. We know there's a lot of Jets fans that aren't big fans of Paul Maurice's. I'm a big believer that what we've seen from Paul Maurice the last 2 years, especially this season, was designing a way of play for his team that didn't allow his offensive players the freedom that offensive players like to have trying to score. I think there had to be a complete and total team defense buy-in. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. And I'm not saying that offensive players shouldn't play defense, but everything is a balance. And if you are spending as much time as you can trying to make sure that you're covering off for your defense core because you feel you need to do that because they're not the kind of defense core that you can leave to their own devices, then it's going to take away from that balance. So, I mean, I think that there's offense to be found if you're able to play a different style of game and devise a system that allows you a little bit more freedom up front. I think that if you get really good defensemen, big defensemen like they had in 2018, and that's, believe me, far, far easier said than done. But the Winnipeg Jets in 2018 had a defense core that could stand you up at your own blue line time and time again, create those turnovers, create the confusion. And the Winnipeg Jets, we know, are an opportunistic team when it comes to scoring. So that's the kind of team that really benefits from the confusion that is created by those turnovers. So I do think that, subtracting offense doesn't necessarily mean that grabbing good defense that play a certain way aren't going to create more opportunities and you aren't going to find defense that way. I mean, that's the goal of what you should be doing. But back to your initial suggestion, Drew, I think a guy like Kyle Connor, if you are able to find the type of defenseman that we're talking about, I think a guy like Kyle Connor should be on the table. I know that's hard for some Jets fans to hear. I know that Kevin Cheveldayoff doesn't want to do that because he's got this player locked down to term at a number that he likes. But this is the deal. You guys know how it goes. When you're looking for stuff, a fan is always going to say, I'm going to give you, a second round draft pick in this prospect who may work out for Connor McDavid. Let's do that. That's not how it works. We know that. We know that it takes significant assets to bring in significant assets. And so that's the deal. You have to get into the mindset of saying, we're going to move a 30-goal scorer, and it's going to suck, and it's going to suck to lose that guy. And we need to know that he's going to go to this other team and continue to be a 30-goal scorer, and that there's going to be Jets fans for years who say, remember when we had Kyle Connor? That was terrible that we let that guy go. How did we ever let him go? But if you're able to bring in a defenseman, and we've seen it, we saw it in game 1 with Montreal, with Jeff Petrie out of the lineup, everyone kind of has to move into a spot where they're a little less comfortable with, and it doesn't work. Well, hockey, I've always said this, and this is a lesson I learned playing senior hockey. You're 3 guys away from being either a really good team or a really bad team, because if you bring in 3 really good guys, you push 3 of the worst guys off the roster from the bottom, and that swing is a massive swing. So if you are the Winnipeg Jets and you are able to bring in a big-time defenseman, then it puts Josh Morrissey where he's supposed to be, playing that role alongside a really strong defenseman, and suddenly you've got a very, very powerful first pairing. And then you get Dylan DeMello into a spot, and I thought Dylan DeMello did phenomenal on a first line role. So I think if you move him down to a second pairing role alongside a guy like Neil Pionk, you've got an offensive element there, a defensive element there. It's a good mix. Now suddenly you've got a first and second pairing that are really, really strong, and you can bring in and do what a lot of other teams do. A guy like Logan Stanley on the third pairing, maybe you bring up Ville Heinola, or maybe you move him up and down the lineup. And now it's not such a risk to bring in your young guys and have them spell off a certain amount of minutes, because you can control those minutes by just going and riding your big horse when you need to. And then on nights where you want to give him rest and when things are going well, you give the ice time to those other guys. So I really do think the Jets are one big swing away from turning things around on defense, but you have to get into the mindset that if you want a big asset, you may have to move a big asset. And Drew, when you talk about Kyle Connor, he's the first guy who comes to mind for me.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And those were some good points, Sean. And one thing I wanted to ask you about, and we're going to talk about this, probably a little bit later in the show, but I mean, when you're talking about this upcoming season, we know that the big RFAs are Andrew Kopp, Neil Pionk. We know that not everyone's going to be back, right? Like, I think you'd agree, Sean, that, maybe a Trevor Lewis or a Nate Thompson, there's a good chance that they're not going to be back. But when you look at, the more significant players that are pending UFAs, I'm talking obviously about Paul Stastny and Matty Perreault. And obviously, you don't have a crystal ball and, the numbers are going to have to work. But what do you think the likelihood is of either of those guys coming back and signing a short-term deal with the Jets?
Boy, that's a good question. I mean, Matty Perreault sure is, usable. I mean, you can use him up and down the lineup. I think that he's got, that second power play. I believe it's run off of the threat of Nick Ehlers and the capabilities of Nick Ehlers, but Nick Ehlers' shot and his ability to get it off is that much more dangerous the way Matty Perreault is able to jump and dive in front of the net. He is a master at taking the goalie's eyes away at the right time, which is what you have to do if you're a smaller player like he is. You can't park out in front of the net like that. And honestly, I think he's more dangerous not parking in front of the net, because if you're a stationary object in front of the net, it allows the goalie to know where you are and to kind of look around. Matty Perreault is, he's like a ninja. He gets in there right when the puck is about to come, and the goalie thinks that he has a shot at it, and then all of a sudden his eyes are gone, and then it's almost more surprise than anything. So I think Matty Perreault is going to have suitors. He's not going to make what he made, before in the $4 million plus category, clearly. But I think there's going to be suitors for his services. And I think the Jets have done a really, really good job. Like that Adam Lowry contract, I still shake my head at the amount of money I think he left on the table. I think it's around $1.5 million that he left on the table. And the Jets love to get deals on their players, and it's phenomenal that they're able to do it, right? Like what Kyle Connor is signed for, what Nick Ehlers is signed for, what Mark Scheifele is signed for. I just think in situations with players like that, they're not going to be looking to, I know people want them to, and I know that people believe in the Winnipeg Jets as they should, as they believe in their core. They believe in them, and they think that players are going to look at them and say, I've got a chance to win with these guys, so I'm going to stick around here, and I'm going to take way less money to do it. Fact of the matter is, if you're Stastny, you can do that and go to Colorado or something like that, right? And you have to wonder, well, he's got a history there. Matthew Perreault, I'm not saying it would happen, but he every time they go to Montreal, you can tell he gets excited about playing in Montreal. He always plays great there, talks about his buddies at home and how maybe they'll cheer for the Jets on that one night. And he usually pisses them off by scoring against the Montreal Canadiens. Like, there's places that you can't ever think of the mindset that the Jets are a team that is on the cusp, so people are going to want to sign here, because there's 10 other teams that are on the cusp. In the reality of it, we don't see it because we get so involved with the Jets and we talk about it and we talk about their capabilities. But I mean, if Boston came calling for either of those players, would they feel they had any less of a chance in Boston than they have in Winnipeg? How about Florida, a place like that? You get to go live in Florida and be on a team that's up and coming. Tampa Bay, would you take, a league entry, a league minimum contract to go play in Tampa Bay? Is they're going to have to cycle some players out. If you're Matthew Perreault and you think you can make a difference there, why wouldn't you do that? So, I think when it comes down to it, the Jets are going to have to pay to keep players like that. I don't think players like that are going to give away money to stay in Winnipeg just to try and win, because as much as they believe in this team, there's other teams to believe in. And I just don't think that the Jets are going to be wanting to pay what the market would bear for those players. So I do think both those players are gone.
Saturday morning, Sean Reynolds is live with us from Montreal. He's covering the Habs and the Golden Knights. He's also talking about the Winnipeg Jets. You're watching, you're chatting, you're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Well, Sean, we're still about a month away from the expansion draft, but of course, everybody here in Winnipeg, once that season ends, you just got to start switching your focus. So before we get to the NHL draft, we got to think about that expansion draft. If you're Kevin Cheveldayoff, and you look at the way your roster is composed, and you're likely to lose either Dylan DeMello, a Mason Appleton, a Jansen Harkins, or a Logan Stanley, what sort of deal are you making? Are you making a deal similar to what you did with Vegas in order to keep Tobias Enstrom?
Well, how did the Vegas deal turn out? In the end, if we believe in the Winnipeg Jets, and it's funny because if you take a look at all those deals that Vegas made, I think at the time people thought the Jets got off the lightest. And then now we look at it, and if we believe in the Winnipeg Jets scouting staff, and I think that most of us do and should, based on what they've been able to do, I think, and I'm not saying it's a definitive, but boy, oh boy, if the Jets would have held on to that pick and had Nick Suzuki, how good would that look right now? I mean, Nick Suzuki he's amazing. What he's doing in this series, in the playoffs for the second straight year in the playoffs, the compete level of that player, the calmness that he brings to a lineup, the ability that he's showing right now to go up against Vegas' second line and not only shut them down, but outscore them. It is absolutely unbelievable. So, I mean, I take a look at that and I wonder if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff, and if you know that you're scouting, they've got their list. They won't share it to us because they say it's sacred, but they've got their list, and maybe that list is sitting somewhere in a drawer in Kevin Cheveldayoff's desk, and every once in a while he may open that desk drawer and look down at it and see, yeah, we would have taken Nick Suzuki in that spot, and is it worth the deal that they made for it? I just saw a report that says that there's sticker shock from a lot of GMs at the prices that Ron Francis is asking for them to make a deal and keep their players. So I think personally for the Winnipeg Jets, it's going to hurt regardless. No matter what you do, it's going to hurt regardless. I'm a big believer in, I was doing CJOB this year, and I was on with John Shannon one day, and he'd said he'd talked, and John Shannon is plugged in. He said he'd talked to a lot of general managers who had realized from what happened against Vegas that, you know what, you're going to lose a player. It's going to sting. It's going to hurt. It's going to suck. Don't make it hurt or suck twice as bad, right? And that's what really seemed to happen with the deals that Vegas made. I think, and this is just my perspective, I have no insight on this, onto what Kevin Cheveldayoff is thinking on whether or not he plans to make a deal. But I think they just need to take their medicine on this one. They need to protect the players that they want to protect, choose who they're going to expose, and be okay with who's gone. The real, the deliciousness in the details is what they are going to protect, because they're in a tricky situation on defense. I think, I'll say it up front now, I think Logan Stanley is going to be the guy that gets picked. Mm-hmm. I had said at the beginning of the year, I thought it would be Jansen Harkins. But I don't know if you're Vegas, how you can feel like you've got a good enough cross-section of what he can do at the NHL level to decide what you get from them. Mason Appleton's intriguing. I think he's another guy who will be exposed, but I just think that the upside from what we've seen from Logan Stanley and the taste that's left in everyone's mouth of what he did in that Game 4 against the Montreal Canadiens, you've at least seen that this guy's a gamer. You've seen his size. He's a rugged guy. I'm down the road and convinced of that. He is a player that opposing players are not going to want to play against. He's a player that when you're going in to play whatever roster he's on, you're aware of him being out there, and it's like, okay, we got to play Logan Stanley tonight. That to me is enough. Never mind the fact that he's got this knack for getting the puck through and on net, and now that we've seen when he's got a clear shot at the net, he's got a heck of a shot. So great shot. He's a gamer and he shows up to compete in the playoffs. That he's tough to play against. And we're just seeing the beginning of what that is going to look like. I think he's the guy. So to me, the decision comes down to whether or not you're protecting Dylan DeMello or Logan Stanley. And it's a tough one, right? Because back to the fact that we're talking about the Winnipeg Jets being a team that needs to compete right now. I think that you hurt your right now more by letting Dylan DeMello go. I think he's more important to this team in the now and maybe over the next couple of years. But I have no doubt about it that Logan Stanley is going to be, from this point on, age plays the biggest factor in it more than anything else. But his capability and what he looks like he's capable of doing is going to be big on that as well. Logan Stanley is going to be one of those guys with a really long career ahead of him. And if you let him go, I'm very confident that, Jets fans 3 or 4 years from now are going to be like, why did we hold on to Dylan DeMello? Look at what Logan Stanley's doing. So it's one of those predicaments. But if the Jets decide to protect Logan Stanley, I think it makes their job of addressing the defense and making sure that it's a championship ready defense for next year becomes that much harder. So it's a tough spot Kevin Cheveldayoff is in.
Sean Reynolds covers the Winnipeg Jets and covers the NHL for Sportsnet. He joins us from Montreal, where he's covering the Habs and the Golden Knights.
Sean,
Rennie,
if I send you a quick e-transfer, can you bring back some Schwartz's smoked meat for me? Just 5 or 10 pounds would be good.
Yeah, sure. Anything you need. Do you need a pickle with that too? Maybe maybe they'll jar the pickles. Yeah.
Pickle, maybe some bagels. That'll do it.
If you want some bagels, I'll hustle and I'll go get you some bagels. I don't know how long the smoked meat.
Sean, once you feed him, you will never get rid of him. Be careful what you wish for.
Hey, as you're in bear country, so it's a situation we're both used to. Don't feed the locals.
And it's funny, Sean. I keep mentioning you. I keep dropping your name. I keep mentioning Jason Bell's name out here in Lac du Bonnie, and everybody just keeps saying, like, "What are you talking about, man? Who are you?" But
really,
you
got to be in the right place. You got to go to Casey's at about 2:00 in the morning and bring up my name, and then it rings out loudly. Yeah.
See, where's Casey's? Because I'm near. I'm close to Tall Timber Lodge. Like you know where I'm, like, close to Nopaming Provincial Park. So whereabouts is Casey's? Is that closer to town?
No, you have 2 young children. You're not going anywhere.
Oh, that's the bar. Oh, yeah.
Casey's is the bar.
They'll get to know me at Casey's.
Yes, Casey's or Lakeview. If they may still have my picture on the back. Do not serve this man.
Sean, thank you, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It was great to be on as always. I can't think of a better way to spend a Saturday morning.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
so
and
much,
of course,
Sean.
the Kenny and Rennie post-game show tomorrow night after Game 4 between the Habs and the Golden Knights. You can check it out on the Kenny and Rennie YouTube page. Thanks, Sean.
Mate.
There you go. Sean Reynolds joining us on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, more Jets talk. You're listening, you're chatting, you're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours, and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve Sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Saturday morning, we're back with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live here on YouTube and all of our social media platforms. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. Nice to see so many of you joining us in the chat room. What we ask of you, smash the like button. If you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, do that as well. Leave us some nice comments. That is your job. Our job is to bring you insightful Winnipeg Jets discussions and analysis. This segment of the program brought to you by Bernstein's Deli, official deli of Illegal Curve Hockey, and home of the Illegal Curve Sandwich. Located in the Corden Village Mall, Bernstein's Deli has been Winnipeg's deli destination for over 30 years. For more information, find them on Facebook or at bernsteinsdeli.com. The renovations to the kitchen at Bernstein's are complete, and the illegal curve sandwich is available. It's been flying off the shelves, I'm led to believe, since the renovations have been completed. Get yours right now at bernsteinsdeli.com.
And they do keep them on shelves. Like, people think that they just kind of, come off of the grill. No, they actually stack them on shelves. Like, there's hundreds of them there, and they come right off the shelf.
Did you change locations?
I did.
Why?
So I'm out at the cottage, at my wife's family's cottage, and everybody's out on the boat right now.
Right.
So the living room is completely empty, and the Wi-Fi is a little bit better, even though I think it's pretty good right now out here. But so I switched back to kind of the back room, just because everybody's going to be coming in shortly. So I figured it's better if I go. This is where I was broadcasting during the Jets Oilers series.
Well, for one of the games, you missed the 2:30 in the morning show because it was too late for you. But who remembers that, right, okay. Dave?
We got Jesse Pollock on. It was all good, right, Dave?
Yeah, better than you. Anybody really, at that point in time.
I would say that a mannequin is better than me, Drew.
Amen to that, my friend. Let's talk about the pending unrestricted free agents for the Winnipeg Jets. By my count, the Jets have 10 pending UFAs this year. That includes a guy like Eric Comrie, of course, who is actually a Group 6 unrestricted free agent, a rare classification, but he does count as an unrestricted free agent. Of the Jets pending UFAs, guys, Paul Stastny and Matthew Perreault, they're at sort of the top of the offensive list of forwards. You got defensemen like Jordy Ben, Derek Forbort. You mentioned Tucker Poolman. Depth guys like Lewis, Thompson, Toninato. Two goaltenders, Comrie, and I mentioned Laurent Brossoit. Who can you see the Jets bringing back? So let's focus less on the goaltenders and maybe on the forwards with that question. Of those forward UFAs, who do you think is likely or a possibility to come back and rejoin the Winnipeg Jets team for next season?
It's tough to say, guys. I don't think there are going to be many. Like, we talked about this a little bit with Sean Reynolds. Like, Trevor Lewis, Nate Thompson. Like, all due respect to those guys, like, those guys were not brought in, as long-term solutions. So could one of those guys be re-signed to a 1-year deal? Maybe, but it goes back to what Dave has been talking about for months now. Like, you have a guy waiting in the wings like David Gustafson, who could possibly be your fourth line center, right, guys? So I think if you're keeping Nate Thompson and that's not going to allow a guy like Gustafson to play in the NHL, that's a problem. So I think Thompson and Lewis probably aren't coming back. And I agree with Sean when he talks about, the likelihood of guys like Paul Stastny and mute your mic, Dave. Paul Stastny and Matty Perreault coming back, because first off, I mean, these guys aren't going to sign for $1 million a year. Like, are they going to make less money than they did last year? Yeah, of course they are. Like, I don't think Stastny's getting $6 million a year. But again, I haven't looked at the comparables. You have to think he's going to be around 3 million, 4 million. Like, Stastny's still a good player, even though you probably won't have to give him more than, 2 or 3 years. But I think that, Matty Perreault probably is more likely to come back just in terms of, the dollar value. But when you're talking about these forwards, Drew, I don't think a lot of these guys are coming back. And same thing goes with the defensemen. Like, I would be, pretty surprised just based on the Jets' depth if a guy like Jordy Ben comes back. I think Derek Forbort has done enough to, I'm in Kess's house right now, Matthew Thompson. Post Malone is actually on the boat with my kids. He's coming back. He was fishing with my kids, so he's gonna come back.
He's fishing with a sword is actually what he's fishing. He's not using a fishing rod, he's using a sword.
Well, I said that last week, Drew. I still don't understand what's going on with the sword. Like, are we in medieval times? Like, anyways.
I've been to medieval times.
Is it good?
Like the sort of amusement park entertaining thing. Yeah, it was fine.
You went there with Jim Carrey, right?
Yeah, Vegas? In Orlando, actually, Dave.
Oh, okay.
Someone's doing well.
It was literally about almost 25 years ago. Go on.
Anyways, no, but look at guys like the Jets have a bunch of young players, and again, it goes back to what we were talking about. Dave can articulate this a lot better than me because he knows these players way better than I do because he's watched them for years with the Manitoba Moose. But when you have Christian Vesalainen, David Gustafson knocking at the door, I'm talking about just the forwards here. I think, it's going to be tough, to justify bringing back too many of these veteran forwards. So, I could see maybe Matty Perreault coming back. Maybe Paul Stastny comes back. I just don't think the Jets are going to have the room, because look at Pionk's going to, get a big raise. Andrew Kopp's going to get a big raise. Like, Kopp's probably going to be around $4 million a year. You have to think, and you have to think Pionk, as Drew talked about earlier in the season, he's probably got himself in that $5 to $6 million a year conversation with the way he's played. Right. So I don't think many of these pending UFAs are going to be back. I do think Andrew Kopp's going to re-sign. I do think, Neil Pionk is going to re-sign. Tucker Poolman, I think will probably be re-signed, but it depends if the Jets bring in, a top pairing right side defenseman, because that means that a guy like Dylan DeMello could be your third pairing guy. And then maybe Tucker Poolman, doesn't factor into your long-term plan. So I don't put it this way. I wouldn't be surprised if Lauren Brossoit and Eric Comrie come back, but I also wouldn't be surprised if 6 or 7 of these pending these UFAs are gone.
Dave, could you see the Jets having interest? If you have Gustafsson as your fourth line center for next year, like most everybody is assuming / hoping, could you see the Jets re-signing a guy like Trevor Lewis, a guy who, I didn't mind Lewis's game this year. I thought Lewis was better than Nate Thompson. He contributed a little bit of offense, obviously nothing incredible, play on the penalty kill, maybe as, sort of the veteran leader in a fourth line role for the Winnipeg Jets. Cause I think we're in agreement that Vesalainen is not suited for a fourth line role. But if your fourth line next year, and who knows what's going to happen, expansion draft and Mason Appleton and everything. But if your fourth line next year is, Gustafsson, Harkins, and a guy like Lewis to add some veteran presence there, and maybe a veteran, sort of a sounding board for two young players, I could maybe see him coming back into the fold for the Jets.
Yeah, I agree. I think, Sean talked about it when he spoke about Matthew Perreault, and I agree with Ezzy. I see Matthew Perreault as a guy you had faith in him. You gave him that deal. It's worked out for both the player and the team in terms of what he's provided. And I think that if you can get him on the right deal, he's not a bad player to have, as a kind of almost a veteran, like more of a veteran.
Up and down your lineup.
Well, it's almost like Andrew Kopp, right? He's got that ability he can kind of slide into different spots in the lineup really for you. And again, we saw what he was able to do on that second power play unit with, providing those screens for Nikolai Ehlers. And oftentimes he went unassisted and he wouldn't get a point. But, a lot of those goals Nikolai Ehlers scored were because Matthew Perreault was in front of the net. So he's a guy I could definitely see coming back. Dominic Tabnato, I thought, obviously, got off to the rough start with COVID to start, so he wasn't really available. He looked good for the Manitoba Moose when he came and played for the Moose. Obviously played for the Jets, got a goal for the Jets. So he's a guy I could see them bringing back. Yeah, I mean, Drew, if David Gustafsson isn't given that opportunity, and you have to earn it, right? That's what we always hear. You have to earn it. But to me, if you're not putting him in a setting, and Pascal Vincent, when we had him on at the end of March, talked about the things that David Gustafsson still has to work on. But guys all have things on their game. Mark Scheifele, it has things in his game that he needs to work on. There's Kyle Connor has things in his game that he needs to work on. So everybody has something in their game. Nobody's a perfect player. Sidney Crosby, close. Patrice Bergeron, close. But nobody here, we're talking about those guys in that same category. So the reality is everybody on this team has some deficiency in their game that they need to work on. So if I've got so much time and energy for what David Gustafsson, again, more offense in his game than we still thought of. Traditionally, we thought of him as like a very responsible 200-foot player who defensively was not going to hurt you. And it's funny because I've talked to him and he says, I want to be that guy on to take the face off with the game on the line. He really is a guy who needs to be given that opportunity next year. And if he isn't, then at that point, I don't understand what you're doing, because he's really been that player who, has done what you wanted him to do. He's played in the minors. He's taken that opportunity. He ran with it last year. He ran with it the year before. You got to give him the shot. You got to give him that shot to be. So to me, it really all hinges on him. These free agents, I'm with Ezzy. I mean, you could see 1 or 2 coming back. You could see none coming back, but there's definitely going to be a lot of turnover.
Yeah, and I just wanted to quickly throw in, guys, if the Jets expose Logan Stanley and don't make a deal to keep him, there always is the chance one of Mason Appleton or Jansen Harkins is taken. And I would probably argue that it would be more likely that Appleton is taken by Seattle. But the point I'm trying to make is that means that there's probably going to be even more opportunity for a guy like Christian Vesalainen, right? Like Vesalainen, I think, someone in the chat said, your fourth line could be, Gustafsson, Vesalainen, and maybe Jansen Harkins or something like that. I think Vesalainen might even be ready for a top 9 role, but that's just me.
We're pleased to be joined on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show by Luke Fox from Sportsnet, talking about Sportsnet.ca to be perfectly exact. Going to talk about free agency, going to talk about the Stanley Cup playoffs, going to talk a little bit about the Winnipeg Jets. Luke, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me. I think Sportsnet's taken over. Didn't you have
we did.
Sean Reynolds earlier?
Yeah. Yes, we had Rennie on before, so it is a very Sportsnet heavy day here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, but that is more than acceptable for us. We love our friends at Sportsnet. Luke, we were talking earlier in the show about Dougie Hamilton because he would fit so well with everything the Winnipeg Jets need on their back end. He would fit so well with so many teams, but the circumstances that he's in the middle of and that the permission that the Hurricanes have given to him and his representatives to go out and really see what the market bears for him is so unprecedented this early in the free agency process. Is this a new approach that you could see maybe becoming more regular in the NHL for pending unrestricted free agents, or is the Dougie Hamilton situation almost a unique unicorn that we're not going to see repeated very often or ever?
Yeah, I think it's a unicorn. It's pretty interesting situation. I think it has a lot to do with the Carolina Hurricanes and just how they run their business since Tom Dundon took over. It's no secret that the guy wants to save money where he can. And in some ways it's worked. I mean, look at what he got Rob Brindamore, the Jack Adams winner, for, a reported $1.8 million a year on 3 years. Like, that's just incredible value. So, in some ways, it's good business, but we see what happened with Sebastian Aho. Like, the last time a major UFA came up with the Hurricanes, it took an offer sheet to force his hand and to get him to sign a check. And I think, what Dougie Hamilton would command on the open market, even in a flat cap, when you look at what guys like Torrey Krug and Alex Pietrangelo got last summer, I mean, that's the kind of ballpark he'll be looking at. And that would be, arguably the most expensive contract or right up there with Aho on the whole team. And Dundon has, quite frankly, been reluctant to sign those type of checks. He likes cost certainty. He's went out and traded for guys whose cap hit, he knows what it is. I mean, I think back to the Noah Hannafin deal, and he was asking for a raise, and he's like, no, I'd rather trade you for Dougie, who's locked up for a few more years at a certain rate. So I think it's kind of like, okay, we know we don't want, or we're not prepared to pay you what you're worth. So we're going to do you a solid. You can go out and see if there's something better out there for you. Maybe we can get an asset back in the old sign and trade, which we don't see in the NHL, quite frankly. Or maybe Dougie tests the market and says, you know what? I'm with a good team. I like the city. I like the guys. I have a nice niche here. A guy who's bounced around a lot for a young guy. Maybe I'll just stay put if I don't see something else out there. But in my mind, he's far and away the most desirable unrestricted free agent on the market. If we're assuming Ovi resigns in Washington, which I think everyone does. So I think there could be a bit of a bidding war, and Kevin Cheveldayoff would be foolish to not at least explore it and see if Hamilton would be willing to go there.
I agree with you 100%, Luke. And I think, Dave and Drew and a lot of people watching right now do as well. It's almost like he's this year's Alex Pietrangelo, right? Yeah. And obviously there's some differences there, but they're both, top 20, top 10 defensemen, arguably, in the league. And, we want to get to to get to some other free agents, and we want to ask you about last night's Habs Golden Knights game, because obviously that was a finish that nobody was expecting. But we've been doing the show for a long time, and we always talk about how we like to get a perspective on the Jets from somebody who doesn't live in Winnipeg and who doesn't cover the Jets on a daily weekly basis. And we obviously have been spending a good part of the first hour and a half of the show talking about the Jets. We asked you about Dougie Hamilton, but if it isn't Dougie Hamilton, like, how badly do you believe that the Jets need to bring in a top 4 defenseman, not a depth defenseman? Like, we're not talking about a Jordy Ben and, Ken Wiebe, your colleague, he mentions Jamie Oleksiak. And I think absolutely Oleksiak could be, a top 4 defenseman. He was so good for Dallas in last year's playoffs, but does that have to be priority one? Like, is there even a debate here? Like, is that just something that, Chevy has to make sure that he checks off his board, this offseason?
Yeah, and quite frankly, I thought he had a bad deadline. I thought he should have addressed it at the deadline. And, you look at guys like Blake Wheeler and even Scheifele and Stastny, who might be walking. Like, these guys are getting older. Like, honestly, I wonder if the best shot was in 18. Just the core seems to be getting a little older. The blue line is kind of a shadow of what it used to be. I agree with you. I mean, you have a Vezina winner in Connor Hellebuck. You have arguably the most dynamic top 9 in Canada, like, just so much depth. And if Pierre-Luc Dubois can ever rediscover his game, that it's a really dangerous group up front. You have to complement that with defensemen. I mean, we're seeing it in the playoffs right now. You look at the final 4 teams, they all have really strong D-cores. They can all lock it down. So yeah, Alexiak's a good one. Alec Martinez is a UFA. He's a good one. Hamilton, we talked about. There's a few others, but they're few and far between. David Savard, I wonder if there's a match there. He's not a big puck mover or whatever, but his type of game, as we're seeing in the Bolts Isles series, it translates pretty well to the playoffs. And he's a nasty shot blocking type of guy who can play in your top 4, kill penalties, do all the kind of unsexy stuff. I know he has a good relationship with Dubois from their Columbus days, so I wonder if there's a match there, if he'd be willing to go. But I'd be stunned if Cheveldayoff doesn't add one, a significant piece. And if he doesn't, then I think it's a failing in the offseason. He has to address it.
Saturday morning, you're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms. Our guest is Luke Fox of Sportsnet.ca. Luke's appearance on the show is brought to you by Dr. Les Rikus and the team at Linden Market Dental Center, official dentist of Illegal Curve Hockey. Don't be an Ezzy. Always wear a mouth guard and give yourself peace of mind protection, as well as facial, teeth, and mouth protection. To make an appointment to get your teeth to ting, visit lindenmarketdentalcenter.com.
Luke, I was reading your quick shifts column on Sportsnet, and I number 5 really caught my eye. Jack Eichel. The rumor mill is rife right now. And it sounds like, from what you're writing, that you might think the Jets fans might be seeing a lot of Jack Eichel next soon enough. So where is that situation going? And do you see Jack Eichel with the Buffalo Sabres to start next season?
I don't see him with the Buffalo Sabres. I don't know if you guys caught his season-ending press conference or Kevin Adams. It looks disastrous there, and it's a shame, right? Like, when a healthy Jack Eichel to me is like arguably top 5. He was on my heart ballot, not this year, but the past season. And it's rare that I put a guy on my heart ballot if the team doesn't make the playoffs, but he was just dragging the Sabres even into contention, like even to have a run at the postseason. He was just dominant, and he gets used in all situations. He's a game breaker, man. He can pass, he can shoot, he can win faceoffs. When he's on his game, he's like a difference maker. But it just seems like both sides here, from everything that's being reported. I follow a lot of Buffalo reporters. They seem really sour on the prospects of Eichel wearing a Sabres jersey again. And it's one of those cases, right, where if he's not going to play for your team, you want him as far away as possible, so you only have to face him twice a year. So right now, it seems like the Anaheim Ducks are really eager to try and make something happen with Eichel. There's people that say the Kings are, and there's people say that the Kings aren't in the mix. I think they should be, quite frankly. I feel like if you're still going to go for it with Kopitar and Doughty, your time's running out. And if you have a 1-2 punch up the gut of Kopitar and Eichel, like, all of a sudden you go from a rebuild to a contender. In what I see is probably the softest of the 4 divisions, the Pacific. So I think there's a playoff spot to be had out there. So it seems like Adams is leaning towards making a deal out west for Eichel. The big hitch here is his surgery and whether or not he gets it, because it's a kind of a unique neck surgery that no one in the NHL has had and come back from. And that's been a big bone of contention between Eichel and the team, whether or not the best route for him to get back to full health is to have that surgery. So you're trading for a guy who his health is up in the air. And plus it's a blockbuster trade that's going to need multiple pieces. Like the word is they're asking for a first plus a prospect plus a player. Like, I don't know. It's fascinating. It's going to be probably the defining trade of the offseason, I would think. And that's with all due respect to Seth Jones if he gets moved.
Luke Fox, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Luke covers the NHL for Sportsnet. You can read some of his great work at sportsnet.ca. Luke, we hear, flat cap. The best players, the top-notch unrestricted free agents, they still get paid. Maybe they don't get paid necessarily the 7 or the 8 years, but they certainly get good dollar value for 5 or 6 years. Could this be a situation, this maybe the year kind of where second tier of free agents maybe get squeezed a little bit, because we know that the best guys are still going to get the big dollars we saw it last summer just the same?
Yeah, absolutely. I think last summer might be the blueprint, just because we're not looking at a flat cap for 1 year. We're looking at it for maybe 3, maybe more years. Like it's going to take a while for the business to rebound. And generally the middle class is getting squeezed. Pietrangelo got paid, Krug got paid, I guess Markstrom got paid, and not much else. I mean, Taylor Hall got paid, but it was only on 1 year. So I think that's what forwards are going to have to face. I think Ovi's an exception. I think he'll get a good chunk of money in Washington just because, he's getting paid off legacy and basically rescued the franchise. And him and owner Ted Leonsis are he is the franchise. I mean, you can't pay him enough to justify what he's done for that franchise, that city. So, I think he'll get his dollars. But outside of that, we saw guys like Anthony Duclair, who had a fantastic season, just linger out there. Mike Hoffman lingered for a long time. Hall, like I mentioned, got his money, but had to take less term. So yeah, I think the middle class is absolutely going to get squeezed this summer, and it's going to be on the GMs to kind of pick the bargain bin and find those steals. I mean, that's a salary cap, right? You got to have either guys on their entry level hit or guys who you got for cheap in free agency hit. Like that's how you win.
Mikael Granlund is another guy, Luke, that I threw in there, right? Like it was like mind-boggling to me that a guy like that was waiting around forever for a contract. We got to talk about last night's Habs Golden Knights game. We were talking about it with Sean Reynolds right before you came on. Like, I mean, we all know that tying goal was just something that nobody expected. Marc-Andre Fleury, mishandling that puck behind the net. And obviously nobody is counting the Golden Knights out, right? Like the Habs are up 2-1, and it's obviously, a bit of a mountain to climb for the Golden Knights at this point. But what's kind of your assessment, 3 games into the series? Like, I still think there's a good chance the Golden Knights can come back. I don't think the series is going to be over in 5 games. But for me, what kind of stands out, in addition to the play of Carey Price, has just been Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, and Tyler Toffoli. Like, we know that line was one of the better lines against the Jets. But what's kind of your take on the first 3 games of the series?
Well, I would say, Montreal, if they score first, they're winning the game. That's been their pattern, as you guys know, through 4 games. You guys know that well. And here in Toronto, we know that well. And last night was actually an anomaly in the fact that Vegas got on the board first, but it took basically an all-time gaffe by Marc-Andre Fleury. And the thing is, if the Knights end up losing this series, which has now become a very real possibility, and it's just kind of mind-blowing to think that they could lose to a team that finished 18th overall in the regular season. But it's real now. But the shame of it is Fleury's been phenomenal all playoffs, but that's the play that's going to turn the series, and it's what people are going to remember if Vegas can't rebound here. What stuck out to me, I think, is the fact that Montreal only needs 2 goals to win. All playoffs. If they score 2 goals, they win the game. So why is that? Well, number one, it's Carey Price, who is just playing out of his mind. It's like he's wearing a Team Canada sweater right now. And number two is the commitment to defense, not just from the big 4 defensemen and Jeff Petrie and Shea Weber playing hurt. I think they have one good hand between the two of them. But it's also the commitment to defense from the forwards. You know, they've bought into the system. They clog up the neutral zone. They make the game friggin' boring. And that's their recipe. This is their formula. They hit and they kill penalties and they wait for you to make a mistake, and they're happy winning 2-1 or 3-2. They don't even care about scoring 4 goals. And they're getting the timely contributions. Cole Caulfield, of course, JJ Watt's favorite player, breakout star. The guy was a healthy scratch. Unbelievable. Him and Kotkaniemi sitting to start the playoffs, and now they're being difference makers. I've been a Habs doubter, honestly. I didn't have them even making the playoffs. And in fact, the Calgary Flames had more wins in the regular season than Montreal. But you have to hand it to them. I mean, they've beaten 2 teams that they were underdogs to, and now they're leading a 3rd team that they were massive underdogs to.
You know, Luke, the expansion draft is still about a month away, but you know, do you think GMs have learned their lesson? Do you think that it is going to look very different with what happens with Seattle than what we saw with what happened with Vegas?
Yes. I think George McPhee, put a masterclass on, in terms of hoodwinking these guys to giving up more than one player or stealing an extra asset. It's going to be fascinating. I'm really excited for it because there's some really tough decisions that a lot of teams have to make. Winnipeg not excluded from that. But I do think the GMs have kind of learned from past mistakes and realized we have to suck it up. We're going to lose a player. Some teams are going to lose a better player than others, of course, just because of the way their cap picture looks and who they can protect. But I do think there's going to be fewer side deals than last time around. They're just going to suck it up and say, look, this is the price of doing business. This team paid a lot of money to get a franchise, and they're going to steal a good player. We'll let them take one player. We won't overextend ourselves and lose multiple pieces in order to protect a guy.
Luke Fox covers the NHL for Sportsnet and sportsnet.ca. You can read his incredible work there almost on a daily basis. You're with the way you've been writing as of late there, Luke. So check him out there. Luke, always appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, guys. This was fun. Take care.
We'll do it again real soon. There he goes. Luke Fox of sportsnet.ca joining us on the show. Let's take another break. When we come back, we'll talk about the upcoming NHL draft, talk about it from the Jets' perspective. The Jets only have 4 selections in this year's draft. Talk about that. Talk about if the Jets' first-round pick could potentially be in play as part of a trade. Much more to come. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Saturday morning, and welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live here on YouTube and all of our social media platforms. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. Nice to see so many familiar faces and new faces joining us in the live chat on this Saturday morning. If you haven't done so already, smash that like button. That's what we ask of you. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Get alerted each and every time we go live, each and every time we have new content related to the Winnipeg Jets, be it video, some audio, whatever it might be. You can check it out here on our YouTube page and, of course, on our website, illegalcurve.com, your home for Winnipeg Jets news, audio, and video. This segment brought to you by Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, officially declared the funniest place in Winnipeg by Illegal Curve Hockey, bringing you North America's top-rated comedians to Winnipeg for the past 35 years. Celebrate your upcoming birthday with great deals for you and all your friends. For more information, go to rumorscomedyclub.com and take it from us, try the nachos. Last night, Rumors and Illegal Curve gave away their 15th prize in this year's ICOT pool. So, of course, anytime a playoff game goes to overtime, we run the hashtag ICOT pool. Stay tuned to our Twitter feed at Illegal Curve for all the relevant information about that fun game.
Just a reminder, my birthday's coming up July 24th.
Yes, you mentioned that a couple of times now. I'm still not sure why, but that's okay. Good for you.
Because you mentioned, Rumors is a great birthday present. So I'm just saying, if you guys are, looking for a birthday present for me, tickets to Rumors would work.
I will caution our audience though, buying Ezzy a birthday gift sometimes results in him throwing it out.
Did he throw out a birthday gift you gave him, Dave?
He did, because as anybody who's traveled with Ezzy knows, whatever that thing, sleep apnea machine is.
CPAP.
CPAP, there you go. So the reality was that Ezzy has a very bad snoring problem. Something we've experienced on many of the Illegal Curve trips to the draft.
In fact, Dave, I believe you could upload audio of Ezzy snoring to our channel here.
Yeah.
And we can just use that as
I don't want to.
Nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah,
actually, I think everybody wants to hear it just to hear what it was like. It was like a lawnmower in a bed.
Let's just put it this way: the draft in New Jersey, 2013, I guess, we were in New York, and I didn't get a wink of sleep with that guy.
No, Dave, you're forgetting what happened. Richie was on that trip with us, of course, and so when I woke up, what would happen is, like obviously, I've been friends with Richie for 20 plus years. So I've been on a bunch of, boys road trips and stuff like that. What Richie would try to do was he would try to fall asleep first, right? Like he would turn the TV on really loud. He'd fall asleep thinking that, the TV would keep me up. Then I'd fall asleep so I wouldn't wake him up. But the problem is Richie's a bit of a light sleeper. So he woke up. When I woke up in that, and I remember, Dave, we woke up really early that day, right? Because we had a full day of draft coverage ahead of us.
Yeah.
And I remember when I woke up, Richard was sitting wide awake with the look on his face like, I am going to murder this guy. Because I'll admit, my snoring is horrible, and the CPAP definitely saved my relationship and now marriage. What was it, though, that you bought me, Dave? It was like something that goes in your mouth or your nose.
Yeah, it was like, I was just hoping it choked you a little bit, but it was one of those, like, as seen on TV things, and it was like, if you have a buddy or
Dave bought Ezzy a shotgun.
So I basically was just hoping that he would. I would hope it would resolve Ezzy selfishly. I should say it was a selfish gift for you, but also a gift for anybody else in your life who had to travel with you. And so, but unfortunately, I think you thought it was like a gag. It wasn't. It was like a few dollars behind that gift.
I thought it was a gag. You wanted to gag me. I mean,
yeah. But
I apologize, Dave. I'll try to fish it out of the garbage for you.
Okay, we'll see that.
It's very admirable of you there, Ezzy. Let's talk about the Winnipeg Jets and not Ezzy snoring because
or his birthday.
Or his birthday, for that matter.
July 24th, if anybody wants to get him something.
Yes.
We'll probably be on air because that's the second day of the draft.
There you go. So there you go. You have it right there, Dave Minuk. The Jets, speaking of the draft, will draft 17th overall in the first round. They will draft 18th overall in all subsequent rounds where they have draft picks because the Arizona Coyotes, of course, forfeited their first round pick this year due to their malfeasance when it came to testing potential draft prospects. The Jets have picks in rounds 1, 2, 3, and 5. Their fourth round pick was traded to the Vegas Golden Knights for Cody Eakin. That, of course, last year. The sixth round pick traded to Vancouver for Jordy Ben. That was at this past trade deadline. Here's a bit of a trivia question. Dave, I think you'll probably know this answer. Ezzy, do you know who the Jets traded their seventh round pick for?
Bogdan Kiselevich.
Attaboy. There you go. You got
it. I read the show plan.
I'm shocked you read the show plan. That's the most surprising. That was actually me testing you to see if you read the show plan because I did not expect that you would have. But yes, the infamous Bogdan Kiselevich trade, which happened a few years ago, also at the trade deadline. He didn't play for the Jets.
I'm pretty sure that happened like right at the trade deadline. Like that was one of those moves that came out like 20 minutes, right, Dave, after the trade deadline. I remember that one.
Usually you're hoping those are like blockbusters. You're really you get the notification the Jets are not done yet, and you're waiting to see who's it going to be? Is it going to be, is it going to move the needle? That one didn't move the needle. It moved the needle backwards. Is where the needle went further on empty with the Bogdan Kiselevich trade to the Florida Panthers a number of years ago. Anyways, that's why the Jets don't have a seventh round pick. When you consider this year's NHL draft, and you consider that so many of these players either played very short seasons or they didn't play at all, would this be the year that the Jets, you could foresee the Jets maybe trading that first round pick as part of a package or as part of a opportunity to help their lineup more in the immediacy? There's so much unknown about so many of the prospects this year, given the bizarre, junior hockey season that we just experienced.
Yeah, and I go back to the trade deadline or prior to the trade deadline when you asked that question, Drew, right? Like, could the Jets give up a first round pick to acquire a David Savard? And I said yes, because I really thought the Jets, lacked that top four right side defenseman, specifically, top four defenseman. It would have been nice to get a left side defenseman as well, right? Like I would have been fine with a Jamie Oleksiak. But yeah, I mean, if the trade is right, if you can acquire, especially a top pairing guy, you move that pick. Sean Reynolds talked about it during the first hour of the show. Like the Jets are in win now mode, right? Like this isn't a team that's thinking 2 or 3 years down the road. When you've got guys like Scheifele, Wheeler, Connor, Ehlers, guys that are in their prime. I mean, not to mention, Connor Hellebuck, who also happens to be in his prime. I mean, this is the time you make those types of moves. So if the Jets aren't going to address those needs in free agency, you have to, consider moving a first round pick. And I do think you have to factor in that this is a bizarre year. It's not considered a strong draft, right? Like I haven't, dived deep into the draft, but I know that this is not considered, one of their deeper drafts, certainly not as deep as, a 2015 or a year like that. Right, Dave? So I think it has to be an option, but, again, I'm kind of repeating myself here, but it really does depend, who we're talking about here. Like, would you have to move a first round pick to get Dougie Hamilton? I think you're going to, at the very least, have to move a solid prospect and most likely a first round pick to have the chance to acquire him, right? Like Carolina.
Well, that's only if you want to want to negotiate with him before July, before the start of free agency.
And I do think that's an option here. Like guys, like the big thing with Carolina is they have to sign Andrei Svechnikov. And you guys know how much I like Svechnikov. He's a really good player. And he's going to get a lot of money. So I think it just comes down to Carolina. I don't know if they can afford him, right? Like they've got, Jacob Slavin locked up, Brett Pesce. They've got other players locked, Sebastian Aho. Like they've got a bunch of players locked up to long-term deals. So it just might be a question of they can't keep Hamilton at $8.5 million a year. So yeah, to answer your question in a roundabout way, I think you do have to consider moving that pick, considering that, you really do have to not only rebuild that defense core, but you have to bring in a significant player. And it might be a couple of defensemen. We talked about it. It might be a veteran left side defenseman. It might be a veteran right side defenseman. We know there's a good chance, Ville Heinola plays a significant role. Maybe even a guy like Dylan Sandberg plays a significant role, but you need to upgrade your defense. I don't know how many times we're going to say that, guys, over the next 4, 5, 6 weeks.
A lot between now and the end of the season. Yeah. That's for sure.
So if you can't address it, like the guy that I was actually going to mention before Luke Fox mentioned him is Alec Martinez. Alec Martinez is a guy that I think we all agree, would have been a nice fit a couple of years ago for the Jets.
Sure.
And, he's not going to cost you $8 million a year. He's probably going to be, I don't know, $3 million, $4 million a year. I have no idea, but it's definitely not going to be Dougie Hamilton type of money. So if the Jets can't acquire that defenseman via free agency, they have to look at moving prospects and possibly a first rounder.
Well, Dave, I noticed, I went and Craig Button released his second mock draft. And as he said earlier, we'll get Craig on with us between now and the NHL draft. And the guy that he has, the Jets selecting is Corson Sulemans. And I might be pronouncing his last name wrong. And he played a whopping 8 games last year in the Alberta Junior Hockey League. So, you're talking about a very, very small sample size. And he's not unique in that situation. This is the reality for so many of these players this year that are draft eligible, that they simply do not know what you're often getting. These players haven't played a lot of hockey as of late. You don't know what their trajectory necessarily is. It's almost been a bye year for so many of these guys because of COVID that, if there's a team who's, really anxious to acquire a first round pick, and in exchange, you're going to get a known quantity, I think you have to take that risk this year more than any other year.
Yeah, and it's funny, Drew, because I asked the scout that, privately, whether they felt confident in terms of this draft, and that they essentially said they do. They feel like they've been able to do their homework still, even though, to your point, it's been such an unusual year. Obviously, you had WHL playing in that bubble in Regina, and you've got different OHL not playing at all. So there's no question about it. It is going to be. That's why I think I've said, to me, this is a year where it's not necessarily those top end guys who kind of are already known quantities. I think it's the guys whose stock could have risen, but you don't know if they will or won't. So I think those are the guys. Those are the diamonds in the rough, if you will, that you'll be able to get in round 2, 3, and 4. That sometimes, you get a Mason Appleton in the 6th round, and that's an unusual hit. But I think you can get a lot of those unusual hits maybe this year more than ever. So I know it's not seen as a particularly deep draft anyways, but I think that there's that opportunity for teams. And they've been able to, like I said, they've been able to do their homework based on not, because remember, these guys aren't just watching a player for the first time last year and saying, okay, let's draft them next year, in the draft. They have a book on these guys. And obviously, to the point I'm making, there's an opportunity for guys to rise that you won't necessarily see, because like I said, the OHL didn't play. Talk about, and just a quick aside, what a benefit to Cole Perfetti.
Sure.
To just talk about the development of a Jets draft pick and have that opportunity to play in the AHL, obviously World Juniors and the World Championship. But, so many of his, and he talked about it when we spoke to him at the end of the season, so many of his fellow OHL players he would have been playing in Saginaw this year. Right. So, and a lot of his guys that he buddies with that played for Saginaw, they didn't get that opportunity. So there is I'll call it the Logan Stanley effect. Logan Stanley, someone asked me in the chat, and we talked about it a little bit about how he was last year, and can Sandberg and Kovacevic do what Stanley did? And I said, well, the difference is that Stanley's 2019-20 season, he was actually injured for quite a bit with the Moose. Really, his offseason gains are what leapfrogged him into a position to earn a spot with the Jets. So what I'm saying is that I think a lot of these kids, it's not necessarily what they did in games, it's how they were able to take advantage. And Pascal Vincent talked about it, I want to say the end of not this season, but the season prior. And he said, we're really going to see, we're talking about pro guys, obviously, but we're going to see the guys who are going to use this time to their benefit. Obviously, Logan Stanley ended up being one of those players. So for draft picks, we're going to see guys who didn't play in games like the OHL or even the WHL with guys who played in that bubble, who are able to jump ahead and maybe take a spot that people didn't necessarily see them in. And I think it may be a benefit for teams. So I think it's going to be a wild draft. I really do. I think it'll be a real good opportunity for teams to get players that, like I said, they may have normally been a second round pick. You might get a guy in the fourth round, that's the benefit for the Jets, who only have those 4 picks this year. I think that could be a huge benefit for them because, look, guys, one thing we've talked about with this Jet staff, everybody knows, and I don't remember if it was Sean, I think it was Sean who said it. You have to have faith in this Jets drafting squad. They've drafted incredibly well, and they've managed to. We talk about that 2015 draft. That might be an all-timer for an organization. A lot of those guys are still in their same position. So to me, only having 4 picks for a team that needs to reload a little bit, especially when it comes to defense forward prospects, because we know the Jets defensive prospects, they've got at least 5 guys. But for forward prospects, they could use some augmentation, because really you've got Gustafson, who we think is going to take a jump. Nathan Smith is playing in college still. We don't think he's going to make the jump to pro. So you do need some guys in that area. So we'll see.
The forward prospects, to your point, Dave, are Gustafson and Vesalainen. Those are the only 2 forwards that are really, I would say, knocking at the door from the AHL level to come and play for the Winnipeg Jets. Up front, way more depth on the back end. To your point, Ezzy, to what Dave was saying about the Jets having only 4 picks in this year's draft, could you see them maybe trying to do something between now and the draft to try and acquire more picks? Not necessarily another first round pick, although you never know with big splashes, if like we were talking about back at the opening segment of today's show, but something to acquire more in that third, fourth, fifth round area, just to again add some additional. When you have more picks, you have more opportunity to hit the lottery, like we talked about before with Appleton, like with Hellebuck, with so many of the Jets. How they've been so successful in drafting guys in those middle rounds, at least a few years back, that those guys now populate some of their roster.
Yeah, and I agree with Dave in terms of, there's going to be the unpredictable element of the 2021 NHL draft for sure. There always is. And obviously we covered them for years, and it seems like every year there's a trade that we didn't see coming, or a draft pick, that was like Pierre-Luc Dubois, right? In 2016 would be an example of someone that we didn't think was going to go third overall. But I think, something that we haven't talked a lot about, guys, is how the expansion draft and the NHL draft are going to have a lot of crossover in terms of, for example, like what if the Jets know that they're going to protect Dylan DeMello, which means they have to expose Logan Stanley, but another team says, hey, we'll give you a draft pick for Logan Stanley, right? Like, I think I'm not necessarily saying that type of trade is going to happen, but I think the trade a lot of people, including us, have been focused on is trading something to Seattle so they don't take one of your players. But what about the Jets trading a player that they think Seattle is going to take to acquire a draft pick? And again, I'm not saying that I have, any, inside knowledge that the Jets are considering this, but I wouldn't be surprised if you saw this with other teams, or maybe you see a third team involved and maybe the Jets get a draft pick, that way to sweeten the pot. So I wouldn't be surprised, Drew, if the Jets do try to acquire some mid-round picks. Obviously, a first-round pick, they'd have to give up something significant. But look the Jets only have the 4 picks. There's nothing they can do about that. They've traded the picks, in previous years to acquire assets. But I think, something that you mentioned earlier, I think is maybe a reason why the Jets don't trade that first round pick, because they didn't have the first round pick in 2018. The Jets don't have a full cupboard full of top forward prospects. Dave is right. The better prospects in the Jets system are on defense. And we're not just talking about Hainol and Sandberg. Dave's been talking about these guys for almost a year now. Johnny Kovacevic, Declan Chisholm, like these types of guys. The Jets are deeper on defense than they are at forward. So yeah, like the Jets could trade that pick, but maybe they're saying, no, we can get a good forward at 18th overall. And I realize some people are saying Carson Lambos at 18th overall. That could happen. I mean, he's obviously from Winnipeg, but
Craig Button, for the record, sorry, in Craig Button's most recent mock draft, he has him going one pick before the Winnipeg Jets at 17 to the St. Louis Blues.
And he was ranked 11th amongst North American skaters. So that means that he's probably going to go, somewhere between 15 and 20. But the point is, guys, like, we don't know, as Dave mentioned, the Jets amateur scouting staff, they have their own lists, right? Like, they might have a guy on their list at 18 who some other scouts have at 25 or 30, right? Sure. So I'll put it this way. I think it's kind of, 50-50 if the Jets are going to trade that pick. I only think they're going to trade that pick if it really helps them, next year. I don't see them moving that pick, for anything else than a guy that steps into the lineup and really makes their team better. Because if that's not the case, then they'll keep the pick, and their track record shows that they usually nail their first round picks, including Logan Stanley, who Dave has talked about many times before. He was the one guy where people said, well, Logan Stanley, that was the one first round pick that really didn't turn out. Really? He looked pretty good in the playoffs for the Jets. And Ville Heinola is another guy that looks like a pretty good late first round pick. So,
and of course, Cole Perfetti is such a wild card for next year, given that he played all year at the AHL level, and unless they change the rules that we would not expect between now and then, he's either with the Jets or he's at the OHL level next year. So I mean, he's obviously a big question mark and a big unknown as to where he's going to be playing in the 2021-22 season. But you're absolutely right. I mean, it's a fascinating draft like no other, in a year like no other. Of course, all Winnipeg Jets draft coverage, all NHL draft coverage, we'll bring to you here live on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show on our website, illegalcurve.com. While you're here, smash the like button, subscribe. Don't miss a minute of anything Illegal Curve Hockey related. We'll take our final break. When we come back, we'll look at the Final Four, talk about the Golden Knights and the Habs, the Lightning and the Islanders. They have Game 4 going later on tonight. One final segment still to come. You're listening, you're watching, you're chatting with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live. It's Saturday morning. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours, and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
While you can't always count on your team winning, nor your favorite player scoring, one thing you can always count on is Bernstein's Deli. They've expanded their services because the team at Bernstein's Deli wants to accommodate your needs and keep you safe. Open Tuesday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. to serve you. Head to your phone, in-store or online to shop for groceries or order meals from the restaurant, like the legendary Illegal Curve sandwich. Just go to bernsteinsdeli.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Final segment this Saturday morning. Welcome back here to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms. This segment brought to you by Boston Pizza. Boston Pizza has the perfect starting lineup. Tonight with the BP Game Day Meal Deal, choose 2 of your favorite medium gourmet pizzas along with a triple order of Boston's famous wings, all for $54.99. It serves 5 to 6 people. Available for takeout and delivery only at bostonpizza.com or download the MyBP app. We've talked a fair bit throughout the show already about the Golden Knights Habs series. The Habs with that 2-1 lead now after last night's dramatic overtime victory. Just imagine the scene. Sorry, go ahead, Dave.
I got to know, Drew, are you Ronnie? Like, are you Ronnie? Like, is it time for you just to admit that you really are Ronnie?
No, I don't like myself as much as Ronnie likes me.
Yeah, like Ronnie likes you way more than you like you.
I don't understand though. Ronnie's going to get you a gift on my birthday. I'm not sure how that makes any sense.
That's because in Ronnie's mind, Drew's the man.
No, I am the man. I agree with Ronnie in that front. But
there's something, all right.
Yeah.
So on your birthday, Drew, your birthday's like a couple of weeks after mine. Ronnie should get me a gift for your birthday then. Well, or maybe Ronnie's going to get you 2 gifts.
I think Ronnie's more likely to give me 2 gifts because he seems to enjoy my presence on the program more than yours. But that's okay. I mean, the more the merrier. I am, this is the Drew Mandel hour, is it not? No, not the Drew Mandel hour. I don't see
if it is, then we're not going
to help us all.
Okay, God help us all is right. In any event, as I was saying, the Habs have that 2-1 lead on the Golden Knights. Game 4 in that series goes Sunday. Can you imagine the scene in Montreal if for Game 6, which is going to take place on Fête Nationale, the scene that'll be happening in Quebec if the Habs can clinch Game 6 on home ice, even though it's only going to be in front of 3,500 people, there might be 350. There might be 350,000 people in the streets cheering on the Habs if that is to take effect.
It might be more responsible to let more people in the arena so you have less people out on the street.
That would be Thursday night next week, if I'm not mistaken. A month before Ezzy's birthday on the 24th of June, not the 24th of July there, bringing it all full circle. Tonight, the Lightning look to take a 3-1 series lead over the New York Islanders. A very close, tight-checking series between those two teams. No real surprise. It should be a fascinating Game 4, much like the first 3 games have been very interesting between these two teams.
Yeah, I guess, starting with the Habs and Golden Knights, like we talked about a little bit, during the first hour with Sean Reynolds and then, again with Luke Fox. But I mean, it's just incredible, guys, right? Like the Habs continue just to defy the odds. And, you're watching that game last night, and I'm pretty sure we were all watching that game, and you're thinking, like, how are the Golden Knights not leading by 3 or 4 goals? And
shots were 25-5 at a point in time.
Yeah, like and it's just it's incredible. But Carey Price and granted, a lot of those shots, Sean Reynolds is right. Like a lot of those shots were not what we call high quality chances. But I mean, the point is the possession was just the ice was completely tilted in Vegas's favor. Put it that way. Mm-hmm. Yet they only had the 1 goal lead. And then Marc-Andre Fleury, pulls the Haitian goaltender. And then all of a sudden, the game is tied with 2 minutes left, right? I also just, assume that Sportsnet is just going to have that side by side with Haiti's goaltender and Marc-Andre Fleury just each, missing the puck in the soccer ball and just have that on loop, 24/7. But it's incredible. Like nobody saw that coming from a future Hall of Fame goaltender. And then we know what happened in overtime because we see a lot of 2-on-0s in overtime, right? So. Yeah. Right. It's just incredible. The Habs are up 2-1 and the Golden Knights could easily be up 3-0, right? So it's kind of similar really to the Jets and Oilers series if you think about it, guys. But I don't think this series is over. I'm not saying that Vegas is necessarily going to win the series because they have to win 3 of 4. Mm-hmm. But I don't think this is going to be a 5-game series. No. I do think Vegas is going to have a pushback.
I would agree with you there. It is sort of amazing when you consider that the Habs played Toronto and Toronto lost John Tavares, that terrible injury. The Habs played the Jets and the Jets lost Scheifele. Whether and we don't need to rehash that. And then the Habs played the Vegas Golden Knights. Now the Golden Knights are without their top center in Chandler Stevenson. I don't think that can be overlooked in the sort of incredible narrative of this Montreal Canadiens run.
Alex Tuck was really good though. He really was up the middle. Yeah. But that
and I'm not saying Chandler Stevenson is in the same caliber of Tavares or Scheifele, but he is very important to what the Golden Knights do.
You could put me with Mark Stone and Max Pacioretty, and they're probably still going to score goals. But no, Chandler Stevenson's Chandler Stevenson's a good player, good Saskatchewan boy. Don't get me wrong, but there's just so much depth depth. I mean, you had Keegan Colasar up with those guys, right? Like Colasar's a fourth line guy, right, from Winnipeg. But yeah, no, it's just incredible. And then you kind of look over at the Tampa Bay Islanders series guys, and I just don't see this necessarily going the Islanders' way. Not saying that the Islanders can't tie it up and make it interesting, even though we know that they've been down 2-1 twice before already, right, to the Penguins and the Bruins. But I'm just looking at that point Kucherov Palat line, and it has to be the best line that's remaining in the playoffs right now. It's incredible what these guys can do. Kucherov, especially in game 2 with those 3 assists, just incredible. And I know Drew, doesn't like the fact that this is a $100 million team, but right now, like the Lightning just look like, I wouldn't
the best team in the playoffs.
Exactly. And I wouldn't be surprised. They are. And when Vasilevsky is playing this way, because he's had to be good too. It's not like the Islanders have played poorly. It just, at this point in the playoffs, the Lightning have the experience. You can tell guys that, that they're gunning for that second Stanley Cup. They're not happy just to be in the semis. So we'll see if the Islanders can tie this game up. Like the fans have just been incredible on Long Island. Like it's just, it's so much fun to watch these buildings with fans. And I realize that, the Habs, don't have anywhere close to a full building, but the Islanders fans are going to do everything they can to help the team, tie this series up. So, it'll be a fun game to watch tonight. The Lightning are just too good, Dave, in my opinion. I still think they're probably going to win the series, and it might be 5 or 6 games.
Final thought to you, Mr. Minuk, before we wrap up for this Saturday morning. What's on your mind? Dave Minuk's soliloquy.
No, I don't really have one. I already had a good one on prospects in the Jets system. So I'm not really full of piss and vinegar right now. I'm petering out. Getting ready into summer mode.
Yeah, you have some leftovers you want to go heat up. If I know Dave Minuk, there's some leftovers in that fridge. You were out at the lake. I'm pretty sure somebody just stopped in and got
chicken
some
fingers.
Pizza.
Am I right, Dave? Chicken fingers?
No,
pizza.
Now my Saturdays traditionally, as he knows, as I kick him out so I can warm up some chicken fingers, is usually the thing. But no, it might be a little salt ice, so we'll see.
There you go. And Dave Minuk's drawing. He's drawing illegalcurve.com in the beach in either Gimli or Winnipeg Beach. He's definitely stopping at Salty's.
If you have not had a Salty's pie in Winnipeg Beach, forever who's listening, you got to have one because you got to have anything there. Stuffed mushrooms are pretty good as well.
Yeah, no, they've got good stuff.
And you're known for being a picky eater, Ezzy.
I will say quickly though that Paul Byron fake and pass was pretty incredible. That was Josh Anderson. You got to give that guy credit. I remember, and I've talked about this before when the Jets were playing the Habs. There was a game in the regular season when he was playing, and I was like, this guy's good. Like he was a difference maker in the game, and then he left the game, and the Jets ended up going on to win and beating Montreal in the regular season. But I thought in that regular season game, I should say. But Josh Anderson is he's such a big boy. And when he can get going, and it's funny, they talked about it on the broadcast. He gets that first one, obviously, as he says, that unusual gift from Marc-Andre Fleury. And then it's almost like he's just feeling it. He's ready to go. And if you can get that big boy going, he could be a difference maker in that series. So, like I said, I don't know that it's going to be over quick. But, boy, if Montreal can make the Stanley Cup Finals, boys, as Luke said, the 18th ranked overall team in the regular season. Wouldn't that be something?
Just don't look directly into Jeff Petrie's
eyes. Trini KP says he's never heard of Salty's. It's a Winnipeg Beach staple. It's a great spot to stop. Yeah. So
right off the highway.
Yeah, and if you're ordering pizza, a little, I'm gonna give everybody a little tip.
Yeah, order it in advance. Call ahead.
So if you're coming from Winnipeg, which I often am, then you can call right when Highway 8 splits and goes from a double lane to a single. That's when you phone and you say you order your pizza and it'll be ready.
It's a 4-lane to a 2-lane.
Well, I'm talking everybody going north. If you're going north,
I know. Give me the phone number, Dave. You know the phone number off by heart. Come on.
I actually don't know it, but I don't. But the point is, make that phone call there. The pizza will be ready for you when you get to Salty's. And it's always excellent.
And if you're a real big eater, try the Marantz burger.
And on that note, with our food recommendations now having been exhausted, we'll wrap up today's show. We want to give a big thank you to Luke Fox and Sean Reynolds of Sportsnet for joining us. A big thank you to our sponsors, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Bernstein's Deli, Zappia Group Realty, Boston Pizza, and Seagram's. Thanks so much to all of these fine companies for making this show possible. They support Illegal Curve Hockey, so you should support them. Of course, in case you missed any of the program, it's available immediately. You can also download it if you want to listen to it in podcast form. It's on the YouTube channel. It's on our website. It's everywhere you would typically look for anything to do with Illegal Curve hockey. For Dave Minuk in the top right corner, for Ezzy Ginsberg in the bottom square, I am your host, Drew Mandel. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.